For our anniversary, my husband personally mixed me a cocktail. I was thrilled, and took IT to the balcony to take a photo, only to overhear him say, "Are you sure it's untraceable?" I quietly slipped back and swapped the glasses. Today is our 5th wedding anniversary. Ethan, my husband, is in the kitchen. A first in our married life. He's been acting mysterious all day, telling me he has a surprise for me tonight. I watch his back as he moves through the kitchen, the late afternoon sun spilling through the window and tracing a soft golden halo around him. He's wearing the navy blue apron I bought him from Williams-Sonoma, a sight so warmly domestic it could be a painting, and yet a dissonant chord strikes somewhere deep inside me. As a senior investigative journalist for the Washington Post, a sensitivity to detail has become less a skill and more an instinct. Ethan, with his long, slender fingers, has always been clumsy in the kitchen. He's the kind of man who complains that chopping onions makes his hands sore, but today he's ambitiously tackling a 4-course meal complete with a specially made cocktail he's dubbed the Anniversary Kiss. The atmosphere at dinner is perfect, orchestrated by him with unnerving precision. Candles flicker, soft jazz plays from the Sonos speaker. He raises his glass frequently, his eyes fixed on me with an intense fervor, his words weaving a tapestry of nostalgia for our 5 years together, and bright hopes for the future. I smile and respond, but the strange feeling won't go away. He seems distracted, his gaze drifting unconsciously to the grandfather clock in the corner. This subtle anxiety clashes sharply with the tender words pouring from his lips. "Maya, just wait here," he says, his smile a little too bright. "I'm going out to the balcony to mix your anniversary kiss." He leaves his seat and heads toward the balcony adjoining our Georgetown living room. I watch as he pulls rum limes, mint and club soda from the bar cart, his movements as fluid and practiced as a professional mixologist. This is more than strange. A man who can't tell soy sauce from Worcestershire sauce has suddenly become an expert in crafting cocktails. I pick up my DSLR from the side table. "I'm going to get some shots of the handsome bartender," I say with a smile. "We need to document this rare moment." He doesn't object, his back to me as he focuses on the cocktail shaker, the clinking of metal on metal sharp and clear. I move to the other side of the balcony, pretending to search for the best angle, fiddling with the aperture and focus. The music from the living room is loud enough to cover most ambient noise, but perhaps he forgot about the state-of-the-art hearing aids I wear. A necessity I acquired after a close call on an assignment. They have exceptional sound amplification and noise cancellation features. Just then, I hear the subtle vibration of his phone on the prep table. He picks it up, turning his body slightly as if to shield it from my view. He lowers his voice, but my hearing aids catch the fatal conversation. "Hello," his voice holds a trace of impatience. A young woman's voice on the other end, anxious. "Ethan, have you started?" "Relax." Ethan's voice drops lower like a snake hissing in the grass. "Everything is going according to plan. Is everything ready? Are you sure it's untraceable?" "I'm scared." Ethan lets out a short, cold laugh. It's a sound that carries a chilling certainty, a cruel finality. "Don't worry, I've done my research. High-purity potassium chloride, taken orally, absorbs into the system almost instantly. It metabolizes in an hour. Even an autopsy will only show a sudden massive heart attack. It's clean, untraceable, no evidence. I'll do it tonight. By tomorrow we'll have the money. Potassium chloride, heart attack, untraceable." Every word is an ice pick, stabbing into my eardrums, shattering the beautiful fragile illusion of a 5-year marriage I had built with love and trust. The heavy camera in my hands feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds. The world through the viewfinder shudders violently. His handsome profile blurred in the lens suddenly looks monstrous and alien. It's almost pure muscle memory born from years of facing down danger that allows me to force myself into a state of cold, hard calm amidst the crushing terror and shock. I take a deep breath. The cold night air burns my lungs, but the sting helps to clear my chaotic mind. I am Maya Evans. I once went undercover for 6 months inside a multi-level marketing scheme to expose its fraudulent empire. I'm the journalist who broke the story on the Omnicorp financial scandal. I face threats and stare down danger, but I never imagined the deadliest trap would be set in the place I call home, and the one holding the knife is the man I've shared my bed with for 1 to 8, 2 to 5 nights. I don't scream. I don't confront him. I don't even let a flicker of my inner turmoil show on my face. I quietly put the camera down. Then with a silent, practiced movement, I press the switch on the recording pen in my pocket. It's a professional habit I've maintained for years in any uncertain situation, always secure the primary source material. Ethan hangs up the phone, his face once again adorned with that gentle, loving smile. He walks towards me holding 2 crystal-clear glasses of mojito, each garnished with a sprig of vibrant green mint. Maya, come and taste my creation. The 2 highball glasses are identical, the liquid within indistinguishable. He hands one to me and picks up the other. His eyes are fixed on the glass in my hand, a look so intense it's almost greedy, as if it's not a drink, but a winning lottery ticket to his perfect future. Oh, shoot, I forgot the cocktail napkins. We're all out on the table, he says, suddenly slapping his forehead with a look of theatrical apology. Hang on, I'll go get some from the pantry. He places his own glass on the small round table on the balcony and walks briskly back into the living room. This is my only chance. The moment he turns, it feels as if the blood in my veins has frozen, my brain is racing, analyzing every detail. He left on purpose to give me time to drink it, to create an alibi for himself. My gaze sweeps over the 2 glasses on the table. They sit there like 2 coiled vipers, silently waiting for their prey. My heart is hammering against my ribs, but I know this is no time for fear. With the fastest, steadiest hand I can manage, I reach out and swap his glass on the table with the one in my hand. The glass is cold and I can feel my fingertips trembling slightly. After making the switch, I pull a lens cloth from my pocket, and with deliberate speed wipe down the glass he had intended for me, erasing any fingerprints I might have left. The entire process takes less than 5 seconds. By the time I'm holding his original glass again, Ethan is walking back from the living room with a new pack of napkins. The smile on his face is firm whether I've taken the fatal sip. I meet his gaze, my own smile blooming brighter than the candlelight. I raise the glass in my hand. Ethan, thank you to our beautiful future. Cheers. Ethan is clearly pleased by my cooperative attitude. The flicker of suspicion in his eyes is instantly replaced by glee. Without a moment's hesitation, he picks up the glass on the table, the one originally meant for me, and clinks it against mine, producing a crisp musical sound to us. He looks at me with deep affection, then tilts his head back and drains the mojito in one go. His Adam's apple bobs, not a single drop is wasted. I watch him. I watch the lethal liquid slide down his throat and into his body. My heart feels nothing but a cold, almost cruel stillness. I smile, bring the glass to my lips, and let my warmth heat the rim. Then, under the guise of turning to set the glass down, I spit the mouthful of liquid into a damp cloth I had prepared, then nonchalantly crumple it and stuff it into the crevice of a sofa cushion. How was it, I ask, sitting back down at the dining table, propping my chin on my hand like a wife eager for her husband's praise. Amazing, Ethan says, smacking his lips with satisfaction, his face beaming with pride. See, I guess I have a hidden talent. As he speaks, he casually glances at the clock on the wall. 7:45 p.m. According to his phone call, the 1-hour metabolic window meant that by 8:45 p.m., it would all be over. The next hour stretches into an eternity. We chat like the most loving couple, reminiscing about the past. He talks about how we first met, about how nervous he was when he proposed. He describes every detail so vividly, as if all that love and affection were real. If I hadn't personally heard that phone call, I would have been completely fooled by his masterful performance. I listened quietly, adding a word here and there while my mind is coldly calculating the time. My eyes are fixed on his face, catching every subtle change in his expression. His gaze starts to wander, his topics become more scattered. He checks the clock more frequently, each movement a little too deliberate. He's waiting. Waiting for the poison to take effect, waiting for me to wilt before his eyes like a flower cut from its stem. Time ticks by 1 second at a time. 8:10 p.m., he's talking less. A fine sheen of sweat appears on his forehead. 8:20 p.m., his face has grown pale. The hand raising his water glass begins to tremble slightly. 8:30 p.m., he suddenly clutches his chest, his breathing becoming labored. He looks at me, his eyes filled with disbelief, and finds me looking back, my face a mask of rosy health and concerned worry. Ethan, what's wrong? Are you feeling sick? I ask softly, my voice laced with the perfect amount of alarm. No, nothing. He forces a smile, but it looks more painful than a grimace. Maybe I'm just tired today. The confusion in his eyes deep and slowly being replaced by a more profound emotion. Fear he can't understand why he's the one showing symptoms. When I should have been the one to drink the poisoned cocktail, did something go wrong with the poison, or he doesn't dare to think further? 8:45 p.m. The time of death he had set for me has arrived. I am sitting across from him perfectly fine. He, on the other hand, can barely string a complete sentence together. A noticeable numbness is creeping into his hands and feet. His lips are turning a faint shade of blue. Each breath seems to require all the strength he has left. He stares at me, his eyes filled with an incredulous, desperate panic. He tries to stand up, but his limbs refuse to obey. Ethan, what's happening to you? Don't scare me. I stand up and rush to his side, my face a picture of pure panic. He collapses to the floor, his body beginning to twitch. A rattling sound escapes his throat like a fish gasping for air on dry land. With his last ounce of strength, he raises a trembling hand and points towards the first aid kit in the corner of the living room. He's asking for help, but he can't speak the truth. He can't say he's been poisoned, because to do so would be to confess to his own attempted murder. His only hope is that I, like a normal wife, would assume he's having a heart attack and frantically search for nitroglycerin. I look at his pained, contorted face, my heart an icy void. I don't go for the first aid kit. Instead, I slowly kneel beside him, lean close to his ear, and whisper in a voice only the two of us can hear. Ethan, the symptoms you're having right now, they're exactly like the heart attack you described on the phone, aren't they? My words are like a bolt of lightning, striking him in his fading consciousness. His pupils constrict violently, his body goes rigid. The eyes, clouded by a lack of oxygen, are instantly filled with an abyss of terror. He finally understands. From the moment I raised my glass to toast, he had already lost. I stand up, pull out my phone, and calmly dial 911. When the operator answers, my voice immediately cracks, filled with panic and helplessness. 911. What's your emergency? My husband just collapsed. Our address is. He seems to be having a heart attack. He can't breathe. Please hurry. I deliberately give the wrong cause, steering the emergency response towards a cardiovascular event. I know this will buy more precious time for the toxins to metabolize. After hanging up, I look at Ethan on the floor, now semi-conscious, his lips slightly parted in agony. I don't spare him another glance. I walk into the bedroom and open the safe. Inside, several life insurance policies lie neatly stacked on the beneficiary line of each one. The name is clear: Ethan Cole. The total payout, a neat $5 million. I take out my phone and meticulously photograph every page of the contracts, then immediately upload them to my private cloud and a separate encrypted email account, a double backup. Just as I finish, the distant wail of an ambulance siren pierces the night. I smooth my slightly disheveled hair, then pinch my thigh hard. My eyes instantly well up with tears. By the time I walk out of the bedroom, I have transformed back into the anxious, helpless, and deeply devoted wife, Maya Evans. The siren cuts off abruptly downstairs, followed by the sound of heavy, urgent footsteps. When the knock comes, I rush to the door, my face streaked with tears, my voice trembling with panic. Paramedics, please help my husband. 2 EMTs rush in, their movements swift and professional. They immediately begin a preliminary assessment on Ethan, checking his blood pressure, heart rate, and pupil response. The lead paramedic, a middle-aged man, asks as he works, "Does the patient have any prior medical history?" "No, nothing." I saw, performing the role of a distraught wife flawlessly. "He's always been so healthy. We were just celebrating our wedding anniversary when he just collapsed." I deliberately emphasized the words, suddenly painting the event as completely unforeseen. "You said on the phone you suspected a heart issue." The younger EMT asks. I was just guessing," I say, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand, appearing utterly lost. He was clutching his chest and said he couldn't breathe, and it looked like the heart attacks I've seen on TV. "Please, you have to save him." The lead paramedic frowns. "Ethan's vitals are extremely unstable, his blood pressure is plummeting, and his heart rhythm is chaotic." He immediately issues an order. "Get the defibrillator ready, push 1 of epistat, we need to move now." They load Ethan onto a stretcher and move quickly towards the door. I grab a jacket and follow closely, crying so hard I look like a woman on the verge of a total breakdown as the stretcher is lifted into the ambulance. Ethan's eyes seem to flicker open. His clouded gaze lands on me, a mixture of hatred, fear, and a faint, desperate plea for help. He wants to say something, but the lack of oxygen renders him mute. I meet his gaze, my face a mask of endless worry. But as I lean in close under the cover of the ambulance noise, I whisper in a voice only he can hear, "Ethan, hang in there. Once we get to the hospital, the doctors will run every test. I'm sure they'll find out what's wrong. I put extra emphasis on the words, find out. What's wrong? Just as I intended, the last glimmer of hope in his eyes dies, replaced by utter despair. He understands once he's at the hospital, once the doctors realize it isn't a simple heart attack. What awaits him is a fate far more terrifying than death, the untraceable perfect murder he designed for me. Now. Become an inescapable cage, locking him firmly inside. The ambulance doors slam shut in front of me. Inside, machines beep, alarms, and the paramedics exchange rapid medical jargon. The air is thick with tension. I sit on a small seat in the corner, my hands clenched tightly together, my body swaying with the motion of the vehicle. My eyes never leave the man on the stretcher. I'm not crying. The real tears dried up. The moment I heard that phone call. Right now, I am as calm as an observer, a journalist documenting a scene. I watch them place an oxygen mask on his face, watch a thick needle pierce the back of his hand, watch the IV drip medication into his veins. All of this was meant for me, ma'am. The patient's condition is extremely critical. The lead paramedic says to me during a lull, he may go straight to the trauma room. You need to prepare yourself. I immediately look up, my eyes filling with fresh tears. My voice trembles as I ask, Doctor, what is wrong with him? Why is it so serious? The symptoms do look like acute heart failure, but some of the metrics are off. The paramedics, as cautiously, his pupillary light reflex is sluggish, and there's evidence of central nervous system depression. We'll need to run a full toxicology screen at the hospital. A toxicology screen, I repeat, feigning shock. As if I don't understand the term. You mean he might have been poisoned? The paramedic looks at me, avoiding a direct answer. Did he eat anything unusual tonight or come into contact with any chemicals? This is the perfect opportunity. I can't be the one to call the police, it would look too calculated, but having the possibility raised by a medical professional seems entirely natural. I lower my head, pretending to search my memory. Then, with a hint of uncertainty, I say dinner was just normal home cooking. Oh wait, after dinner he made me a cocktail himself. He called it the anniversary kiss. He had one too. Could it have been the drink? I skillfully slip in the information that he had one too, simultaneously pointing to a potential source of poison while placing myself and him in the same boat as potential co-victims, temporarily clearing myself of suspicion. A cocktail, the paramedic's frown deepens. Did it have complex ingredients? I don't really know. I think there was rum, lime, mint, all very common things, I answer, carefully avoiding any mention of potassium chloride. The paramedic nods, not asking any more questions, but the flicker of thought in his eyes tells me my words have taken root. Once planted, the seed of suspicion will grow in the mind of a professional. He will insist on the most comprehensive toxicology screening, and that is exactly what I want. The ambulance screams into the hospital's emergency bay. The back doors are thrown open, and a blast of cold air rushes in. The stretcher is wheeled out, its wheels screeching against the pavement. I jump out and hurry after them. The automatic doors of the ER slide open, revealing a world of blinding white light and the overwhelming, suffocating smell of antiseptic. As Ethan is wheeled through the doors of the trauma unit, a nurse stops me. I lean against the cold wall and let out a long, slow breath. The tension that has held me rigid for hours finally begins to ease. Step 1 is a success. I not only survived, but I've delivered him to the hospital, placing him on the very edge of law enforcement's radar. What comes next is a silent war waged within the white walls of this hospital. The hallway outside the trauma unit is a condensed theater of human emotion, thick with anxiety, sorrow, and the smell of disinfectant. I sit on a cold bench, my hands clasped in my lap, looking like any other family member worried about a loved one inside. However, my mind is a sea of unprecedented calm. I am replaying every single detail from the moment I heard the phone call to now, ensuring there are no flaws. After about an hour that felt like a lifetime, the doors to the trauma unit open. A young doctor walks out, pulling off his mask, his face etched with fatigue. I immediately stand and rush towards him. Doctor, how is my husband? We've stabilized him for now, the doctor says, which is only half of what I want to hear, but his condition is still very complex. Our preliminary assessment is that this wasn't a simple cardiac event. It's more consistent with poisoning. Poisoning? I feigned shock and disbelief. Perfectly, how could that be? We ate the exact same food. That's what we need to ask you. The doctor says, his expression serious. We detected an extremely high concentration of potassium ions in his blood, far exceeding the normal range. This was the primary cause of his cardiac arrest. We suspect potassium chloride poisoning. That's a strictly controlled substance typically used. For medical injections, it's impossible for it to appear in a daily diet per hospital protocol. We have to report this to the police. Here it comes. I think to myself, everything is proceeding exactly as I planned. I show no joy instead, adopting a tone of near collapse. The police. How can this be, doctor? Are you sure you're not mistaken? How could we have something like that in our house? We're just reporting based on the test results. The specifics will have to be investigated by the police. The doctor says, patting my shoulder consolingly. Before turning to leave, I lean against the wall, my body slowly sliding down until I'm crouched on the floor, my face buried in my arms. My shoulders shake as if I'm crying silently, passing nurses and other families cast sympathetic glances my way. No one knows that beneath this facade of grief lies a mind as cold and sharp as a surgeon's scalpel. Ethan has moved to the intensive care unit, with no visitors allowed for now. Before long, 2 uniformed police officers arrive at the hospital after a briefing from the doctors. They find me Mrs. Evans, the lead officer, a middle-aged man with a square jaw and sharp eyes, asks. Yes, I say, looking up with red swollen eyes. My voice hoarse. We're detectives with the MPD. We need to ask you a few questions regarding your husband Ethan Cole's poisoning. The hospital has filed a report. Detectives. I really don't know anything, I say, standing up, swaying slightly as if I'm about to faint from the shock. Don't be alarmed, ma'am, this is just a routine inquiry, the younger female officer says, steadying me with a gentle hand. Can you tell us in detail what you and Mr. Cole ate and drank tonight? I recount the dinner menu and the specially made mojitos, omitting, of course, the detail about swapping the glasses. Ethan made the 2 drinks himself. I emphasize we each had one, and we drank them at almost the same time. Why was he poisoned? But I'm perfectly fine. I pose the most critical question myself, positioning myself as a bewildered victim. The detectives take notes. Has anything unusual happened in your lives recently? Have you made any enemies? I shake my head, then hesitate, as if just remembering something. Ethan. I think he's been having some financial trouble lately. He started a small consulting firm, but a big project fell through. I think he was in some debt. Could it have been one of his business rivals? I skillfully divert their investigation towards external factors, creating an image of Ethan as a potential victim of corporate sabotage. This is to prevent him from getting desperate and turning on me. I need him to believe that if we stick to the same story, blaming a non-existent third party, he might still have a chance. After the interview, the police inform me they will be going to our residence to conduct a crime scene investigation and ask me to remain at the hospital. I nod and watch them leave. The next morning, Ethan's condition stabilizes, and he's moved from the ICU to a regular room. He's awake, but the ordeal of stomach pumping and resuscitation has left him as frail as a piece of paper. When I enter the room, he's lying in bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. Seeing me, his clouded eyes move, a complex mixture of hatred, fear, and the dazed confusion of a survivor. I close the door, place the thermos I brought on the bedside table, and say softly, "You're awake. The doctor said you can have some clear liquids. I made you some broth." My tone is as gentle as if nothing ever happened. He doesn't respond, just stares at me, his lips moving to form a raw, raspy sound. Why? Why, what, I ask, pulling a chair to his bedside, meeting his gaze calmly. Why was I the one who was poisoned? He asks, the words a painful effort. I smile, a smile completely devoid of warmth. Ethan, what are you talking about? The doctor said we were both poisoned. It's just that I have a stronger constitution, so I didn't have a reaction. I lie with a straight face, blurring the lines of what happened. He clearly doesn't believe me, struggling to sit up. You switched the drinks. I switched the drinks. I raise an eyebrow, and feigned surprise, I take out my phone, open a video file and hold it in front of him. On the screen is the footage I took with my DSLR last night of him making the cocktails. The angle is clear, the lighting perfect. Look, Ethan, this is the video I took of you. Last night you personally made 2 drinks. You put one on the table and handed one to me from beginning to end. I never touched your glass. The police have seen this too. They said it could be used as evidence. He stares at the video, his eyes widening, the color draining from his face. He can't remember. In his state of extreme nervousness and excitement, he can't recall which glass he handed me and which he placed on the table. My video, combined with his muddled memory, creates an evidentiary loop that is incredibly damning for him. No, impossible, he mutters to himself. I put my phone away, lean in closer, and continue in a voice only we can hear. Ethan. The police have opened a case. They suspect someone intentionally poisoned you. Did you cross someone recently? Maybe those loan sharks you owe money to. He looks up sharply, a flash of panic in his eyes. I catch it right now. You and I are on the same side. I continue in my calm, gentle tones, speaking the coldest of words. Think carefully. A non-existent third party is your only way out. Otherwise, attempted murder of your own wife? What do you think the police will conclude? And what do you think that $5 million insurance policy will look like? Then my words are like a precision scalpel dissecting all his pathetic arguments, and hopes he looks at me. His expression shifting from terror to dependence, faced with death and prison. He has no choice but to believe in the lifeline laid out for him now. Tell me, I say, adopting the professional demeanor of a journalist conducting an exclusive interview. Who gave you the potassium chloride? Ethan is completely broken, faced with the threat of death and a long prison sentence. His meager intelligence and cunning schemes are no match. He looks at me like a drowning man clutching at a piece of driftwood. Even though he knows that driftwood could drag him under at any moment. It was Jessica, he whispers, finally uttering a name. Jessica. I repeat the name in my mind, my brain's database running a quick search. The name is completely unfamiliar. I thought I knew Ethan's social circle, but clearly I only knew the tip of the iceberg he allowed me to see. Who is she? I press on, my voice as calm as if we were discussing the weather. She's a nurse at a med spa. Ethan says, avoiding my eyes, his voice is faint as a mosquito's buzz. We've known each other for 6 months. 6 months. What a beautiful 6 months. While I was worrying about his career and planning for our future, he was in the arms of another woman, plotting my demise. A sharp pain radiates from my heart, but I force the surging emotions down. This is not the time for grief. It's the time for gathering information and weaving my net. She got the potassium chloride from the clinic. He nods. She said it was hard to get, but one of the doctors at her clinic was careless with inventory. She stole a small amount and ground it into a powder. Was this plan something you came up with together? My voice remains steady, but each word is like a shard of ice. It was her idea. Ethan immediately begins to shift the blame, a common tactic for men like him. She said that if you had an accident, the insurance money would solve all my debt problems, and then we could be together. What a touching love story, I sneer internally. But keep my expression neutral. The police have opened an investigation. They will check financial records, phone records. This Jessica person can't be hidden. We need to get our story straight. Now I stand up and pace around the room like a lawyer analyzing a case for a client. I stop, look at him, and say word by word, from this moment on, you need to remember this. You and Jessica are just casual friends. You were being threatened by loan sharks, so you went to her for help, hoping to buy something for self-defense like pepper spray, and you were poisoned because one of those non-existent loan sharks snuck into our house without your knowledge and put something in the drinks. The target was you. And I was just lucky. It's a story full of holes, but for now it's the only one that can temporarily distance both of us from the crime. It turns Ethan from a murderer into a victim, and Jessica from an accomplice into an unwitting pawn. And I become the lucky survivor. Ethan looks at me, his eyes filled with gratitude and dependence. Maya, I knew you still loved me. I almost laugh out loud. The word love coming from his lips is the greatest insult I don't respond to. His declaration merely reminding him coldly, think through every detail of this story. You must answer every one of the police's questions according to this script. One wrong word, and we're both finished. Without another look at him, and leave the room. The moment I'm out, I find an empty corner and quickly type out the contents of our conversation, encrypting it and sending it to my cloud storage. This isn't about trust, it's about evidence. A man like Ethan could turn on me at any moment to save himself. I need a record of him admitting Jessica's existence. That afternoon, the police came to see me again. This time they brought the preliminary findings from the crime scene. Mrs. Evans, we found a small, unlabeled vial at the bottom of your kitchen trash can, the lead detective said, his expression grave. Our lab confirmed that the residual powder inside matches the substance found in your husband's blood. It's high-purity potassium chloride. I immediately feign extreme shock. How is that possible? How could something like that be in our house? We also lifted a clear fingerprint from the vial. The detective continued. We ran it through the database. The print belongs to your husband, Ethan Cole. His words hit me like a bombshell. I stagger back, needing to brace myself against the wall to stay upright. I look at the detective, my eyes filled with pain and disbelief. No, that's impossible, Ethan. Why would he try to harm himself? My performance is flawless. A devoted wife, shocked, grieving, and in complete denial upon learning her husband might have attempted suicide. We haven't ruled out that possibility, the female officer said, observing my reaction. But we found no suicide note, and judging by the dosage, it's more consistent with a planned homicide. Mrs. Evans, has your husband been acting unusually lately? Any signs of depression? Did he mention writing a will? I shake my head, tears streaming down my face. No, nothing at all. We were just planning a trip for next month. How could he? Detectives, someone must have framed him. It must have been those loan sharks. They threatened him, said they'd kill him if he didn't pay them back. I seamlessly introduced the script I created for Ethan. The two detectives exchange a look. Clearly, my statement provides them with another avenue for their investigation. Loan sharks. Can you give us the specifics? I give them a brief overview of Ethan's struggling business and his borrowing from predatory lenders. I also unintentionally let it slip that he had asked a friend for help, a nurse named Jessica, hoping to get something like pepper spray for self-defense. I've now reframed the potassium chloride as a self-defense item, further marginalizing Jessica's role and making her seem like an innocent friend caught in the crossfire. My goal is to make the police believe that the trail leading to Ethan and Jessica is a setup, and the real culprit is the non-existent third party. After the police leave, I immediately send a text to Ethan, updating him on the police's findings and my statement telling him to maintain the same story. He quickly replies with an okay, followed by thank you, thank you, thank you. I stare at the words, feeling nothing but bitter irony. I'm not helping him. I'm weaving a more intricate cage for him. Now the police's main focus will be on investigating the so-called loan sharks, which will buy me the precious time I need to find the real accomplice, Jessica. I can't wait for the police to do it. As a journalist, I have my own sources and methods. I return to the Post newsroom and use our internal databases. I quickly pull up information on every nurse named Jessica in the DC area by cross-referencing age and place of employment. I narrow my target down to a high-end private med spa in Chevy Chase called Venus Aesthetics. I don't act immediately. Instead, I call a friend who works for the DC Department of Health. He has access to more restricted. Hey Mark, can you do me a favor? I need you to check if there's a nurse named Jessica at Venus Aesthetics in Chevy Chase. Also, can you see if you can pull up their recent pharmaceutical procurement and usage logs, specifically for potassium chloride? There's a pause on the other end. Then Mark's voice grave. Maya, what are you asking about that? For potassium chloride is a high-risk controlled substance. Misuse is a serious felony. I'm working on a story. I reply calmly. It's a matter of life and death. The police investigation into the non-existent third party hit a dead end. The phone numbers Ethan provided for the supposed loan sharks were either disconnected or untraceable, clearly fabricated to support his story. Inevitably, the focus of suspicion shifted back to Ethan and me. The detectives began to question me, repeatedly probing every detail of that night. Searching for cracks in my testimony, I remained composed, playing the role of the victimized wife to perfection. My grief, my confusion, my defense of my husband. It all seemed so real. But I knew this charade couldn't last forever. The police weren't fools. They would eventually find the logical inconsistencies in the story. I had to find Jessica, and fast. Just then, Ethan started to panic through a relative who came to visit. He secretly passed me a note. On it, scrawled in a shaky hand, were the words, "The vial." I remember now. I threw the bottle for the powder in the kitchen trash. The police will find it. I looked at the note and smiled coldly. He finally remembered. Too late. The police had not only found the vial, but they had also lifted his fingerprint from it. But I didn't tell him that. Instead, I decided to use his fear. I immediately wrote back on a new slip of paper. Don't panic. The police haven't searched the house yet. They've only questioned me at the hospital. I'll find a way to go back and get rid of it now. I deliberately created a sense of urgency, making it seem like I was rushing to cover his tracks to earn his deeper trust. In reality, I had no intention of going home. I knew our Georgetown townhouse was likely under surveillance by plainclothes officers. I needed a plausible reason to leave the hospital, and a reason that would lure Jessica out into the open. I dialed Ethan's mother's number. Carol, who lived in rural Ohio, had never liked me considering my demanding career, an affront to her idea of a proper wife. The moment she picked up, I burst into tears. "Carol, you have to come. It's Ethan. Something terrible has happened." I told her the whole story, embellished, of course, with the version I had fabricated. Ethan, the victim of a vicious business rival, poisoned, and now fighting for his life on the other end of the line. She shrieked and wailed, promising to catch the first bus to DC. After hanging up, I texted Ethan, "Your mom is on her way. You have to get Jessica to go to the house and get rid of that vial. Before she arrives, once your mom is here, there will be too many people around. It'll be impossible." I had put him under immense time pressure. And he took the bait. He replied almost instantly, "Okay, I'll contact her right now." I could almost picture him in his hospital bed, frantically typing a message to his lover. Meanwhile, I was on my iPad, calmly watching every word he typed appear on my screen thanks to a cloud-syncing keylogger I'd installed on his phone months ago for a story I was working on. "Jess, I need your help. The vial with the powder is still in the kitchen trash at my place. The cops could search it anytime. You have to go get it and dispose of it immediately. The address is the spare key is under the doormat." The message sent. I didn't intercept or delete it. In fact, Jessica, to hurry. Because 5 minutes before, Ethan sent that text, I had used a burner phone to make an anonymous 911 call reporting a suspicious young woman attempting to break into a townhouse at that very address. Now, it was a race against time. Would Jessica find the vial first, or would the police catch her in the act? I sat on a bench in the hospital corridor, outwardly anxious about my mother-in-law's impending arrival. In reality, a micro earpiece was tucked into my ear, feeding me real-time traffic updates from a friend in the city's traffic division. "All units be advised. White VW Beetle license plate is proceeding at high speed from the vicinity of Venus Aesthetics towards Georgetown. Monitor and report location." That was her, Jessica's car. A cute white Beetle. A perfect match for her angel in white persona. I stood up and walked to a window overlooking the street. About 20 minutes later, 2 police cruisers, lights flashing, sped away from the hospital, heading in the direction of my house. At almost the same time, a new message came through my earpiece. "Target vehicle has entered the specified residential area. The fish was in the net." I didn't rush home to watch the show. I needed a perfect alibi. I walked back into Ethan's room. He was staring anxiously at his phone, waiting for word from Jessica. "Any news?" I asked softly. "She said she's almost there." Ethan's voice was dry with nervousness. "Good." I nodded. I pulled up a chair and began peeling an apple for him, making small talk. "Ethan, when you get better, where should we go on vacation?" I was thinking somewhere with a beach. I used the most mundane conversation to keep him and myself in that room, every second captured by the hospital's security cameras, every moment a testament to my innocence. About 10 minutes later, Ethan's phone rang. It was Jessica. He answered immediately, his voice a low whisper. "Did you get it on the other end?" Jessica's voice was choked with tears and terror. "Ethan, the police arrested me. They said I was breaking and entering. I just got to your front door. I hadn't even touched the key. And they came out of nowhere." The color drained from Ethan's face. Smack, the phone slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. "What's wrong? What happened?" I asked, jumping up. And feigned alarm. He looked at me, utterly devastated, his lips trembling, unable to form a single word. He couldn't understand how the police could have been there at that exact moment. He couldn't understand how every move he made seemed to land him squarely in another custom-made trap. I bent down and picked up the phone. The screen was still lit. The call was still connected. I put it to my ear and heard a police officer's stern voice on the other end. "Ma'am, state your name and why you were at this location." I ended the call and placed the phone back on the bedside table. Then I gently patted Ethan's ash and cheek. "Don't be afraid, Ethan," I soothed. "It must be a misunderstanding. The police just made a mistake. Your friend just needs to explain that you asked her to go to the house to pick something up for you, and everything will be fine." My words sounded like comfort, but they were actually a new set of instructions. I was telling him to contact the police, to confess that he was the one who sent Jessica to the house. In doing so, he would clear her of breaking and entering, but he would also be cementing their relationship as accomplices with his own words, like a man grabbing for a lifeline. Ethan fumbled for the nurse call button. He had to see the Police. He had to clear up this misunderstanding. He had to save his lover, not knowing that every word he spoke would be another brushstroke on the canvas of his own. Jessica was taken to the local precinct thanks to Ethan's clarification. The suspicion quickly shifted. From burglary to her being a person of interest in the poisoning case, she was placed in an interrogation room cut off from the outside world. I knew this was my best chance to get to her. I couldn't go as a victim's family member. That would raise suspicion. I needed a more professional, more legitimate identity. A journalist. I went back to the Post and found my editor, a man in his late 50s who had spent his life in the trenches of journalism. I didn't hide anything. I laid out the entire story, the attempted murder version, and made my request. I wanted the paper to officially cover the bizarre poisoning case with me. As the lead reporter, my editor listened in silence, his expression a mixture of shock, sympathy, and a deep abiding respect for his star reporter Maya. He said, his voice heavy, the paper will back you on this. Whatever resources you need, just ask. But you have to promise me you'll stay safe. This isn't just a story anymore, it's a war. I nodded, a wave of warmth spreading through my chest with the backing of the paper. My actions now had a legitimate cover. I didn't go to the precinct right away. I knew Jessica would be in a state of panic and confusion. Approaching her now would only make her defensive. I needed to let her feel the despair first, to let her realize that Ethan was not going to save her. I spent the afternoon digging into Jessica's background. She came from a working-class family, a classic good girl. Her good looks made her popular at the med spa. Her social media was a curated gallery of designer bags, Michelin star restaurants, and luxury vacations, a lifestyle completely at odds with a nurse's salary. The timeline of these posts corresponded perfectly with the 6 months Ethan said they had known each other. I also discovered that the white VW Beetle registered in her name was purchased just 3 months ago, paid in full. The money came from a high-interest personal loan. I was almost certain Ethan had taken out the loan in her name, likely to cover some of his gambling debts. Armed with this information, I used my press credentials and the paper's connections to arrange a meeting with Jessica. We met in a small, sterile interrogation room at the police station. She was wearing a standard-issue jumpsuit, her hair a mess, her face pale and stripped of its usual perfect makeup. She looked up when I entered, first with confusion, then with open hostility. A reporter. She clearly hadn't expected to see me. I smiled and nodded, sitting down across from her. I brought no recording equipment, just a pen and a notepad. I didn't start with questions. Instead, I spoke in a sympathetic tone, like a concerned older sister. Jessica, don't be nervous. I'm not here to interrogate you. I just want to hear your story as a woman. I'm just curious, what brings a person to a place like this? My opening clearly caught her off guard. Her defenses lowered slightly. I have nothing to say, she mumbled. Looking down. Really? I didn't push. I shifted topics. I saw your Instagram. You have a very glamorous life. That new season Chanel bag is impossible to get, and that sushi place you went to last week, the tasting menu there is astronomical. Ethan must treat you very well. At the mention of his name, her body tensed. I continued, my voice calm. And even he must have promised you a lot. Right, that he would divorce me and marry you, that once he got the insurance money you two could run away together, leave all your money worries behind. Every sentence was a targeted strike at her deepest vulnerabilities. Her face grew paler and her lips began to tremble. That's, he said. She finally admitted, her voice laced with a bitter resentment. And you believed him? I looked at her, my eyes filled with a sad pity. You believed he would kill his wife of 5 years for you, Jessica? You're an educated woman. Don't you know that if a man truly loves you, he will clear a path to be with you honorably? He won't ask you to hide in the shadows and use the filthiest, most despicable means to take another woman's life. And place my words were a sharp knife slicing through the flimsy fantasy of love she had woven for herself, exposing the bloody reality beneath. No, that's not it, she retorted, agitated. Ethan said he didn't love you. He said your marriage was already dead. He said you were a workaholic who never cared about him, and you believed him. I said with a cold laugh. I took out a few photos from my bag and slid them across the table. They were family photos, me at a work gala with Ethan, me celebrating his parents' anniversary with them in every picture. I was the image of a graceful, supportive wife. And then there's this. I played a video on my phone. It was from my last birthday. Ethan was playing the guitar and singing to me, his eyes so full of love they could drown a person. Jessica stared at the photos in the video, her expression shifting from anger to confusion, then to doubt. Now let me tell you something else, I said, putting my phone away and leaning forward, lowering my voice at the hospital. Ethan has already pinned everything on you. He's telling the police that you were the one who provided the potassium chloride, that you were the mastermind behind the whole plan. He's claiming he was just weak, that he was so in love with you he let you lead him astray. What? Jessica shot to her feet, the chair screeching against the floor. How could he? It was him. He begged me to help. He said he was being hounded by loan sharks and had no other way out. Calm down, Jessica, I said, gesturing for her to sit. This isn't the time to argue about who's to blame. The fact is to save himself. Ethan has already thrown you to the wolves. If you continue to cover for him, you'll be facing a charge of accessory to attempted murder. You know better than I do how many years that carries. She collapsed back into the chair, utterly defeated, tears finally streaming down her face. I didn't comfort her, I just watched her cry. When her sobs subsided, I handed her a tissue and stated my purpose in the plainest possible terms. You have only one way out of this. Now become a witness for the prosecution. Give the police everything. You have all your text messages with Ethan, the money transfer records, the proof that he asked you to retrieve that vial. Do that, and you might get a reduced sentence for being an accomplice. Otherwise you can go down with him and pay for your so-called love story in prison. I stood up, looking down at her like a judge pronouncing a sentence. I'll give you 1 day to think about it. I expect an answer by this time tomorrow. I turned and walked away without looking back. I knew she would make the right choice. Self-preservation is the most basic human instinct, and I had just offered her the only chance she had to survive. Just as I was waiting for Jessica's decision, an unexpected player entered the field, my mother-in-law, Carol. She arrived at the hospital after an overnight bus ride, looking exhausted and disheveled the moment she walked into the room and saw her precious son lying pale and weak in the bed. The grief and rage she had been nursing all journey erupted. But her target wasn't the non-existent culprit. It was me. Your bad luck, she shrieked, rushing at me like an enraged lioness, her hand raised to slap me. I didn't flinch, just at her coldly. My gaze must have given her pause, because her hand stopped mid-air, but I knew this was only the beginning. My Ethan has had nothing but misery since he married you. She spat, her voice sharp and venomous. All you do is care about your stupid job. When have you ever truly cared for him? Now look, he's been harmed like this. Are you happy now, you black widow? Her tirade attracted the attention of the other patients and their families in the ward. I didn't argue, I didn't cry. I just stood there and let her vent. I knew that the more vicious she was, the more it would highlight my own silent, dignified suffering. From the bed, Ethan weakly tried to intervene. Mom, stop it. It's not Maya's fault. His defense only served as further proof of my manipulative powers in his mother's eyes. Oh, you're still protecting her at a time like this? She wailed even louder. What kind of spell has she put on you? The chaotic scene was finally broken up by the head nurse, who sternly told Carol to be quiet. Though reluctant, she didn't dare make another scene. She just sat by the bed, wiping her tears and shooting daggers at me with her poison-filled eyes. I ignored her, quietly wiping Ethan's face and hands with a warm cloth, giving him water and helping him with his medication, playing the role of the devoted wife to perfection. My meekness and forbearance filled Ethan's eyes with guilt. He probably felt that he had treated a woman who loved him so deeply in the most despicable way. That evening, I used the excuse of going home to get a change of clothes to leave the hospital. I knew this would be the perfect opportunity for mother and son to be alone, and some things needed to be said by Ethan himself to have the desired effect. I didn't actually go home. I went to a coffee shop across the street from the hospital and connected via Bluetooth to the recording device I had hidden in the room, a device disguised as an aromatherapy diffuser on the bedside table in the hospital room. Carol's crying had stopped. She lowered her voice. Son, you tell me the truth. What really happened? Why are the police saying it was poison? Did you get involved with some shady people? There was a long silence from Ethan. Then in a very weak voice he began to recount the story I had created for him. The loan sharks, the business rivals frame up. Carol listened, horrified, cursing the villains who had done this to her son. Then what about that nurse Jessica? What's her deal? Carol had clearly heard something from the police. She's just a friend, Ethan replied, sticking to our script. I just asked her for a small favor. I never thought it would drag her into this. What kind of favor? Carol pressed. It was just Ethan's voice faltered. At that moment I decided to add some fuel to the fire. I used a burner phone to send an anonymous text to Carol's cell. The message was simple: your son wasn't poisoned by a rival. He tried to murder his wife for the insurance money and drank the poison himself. If you want the truth, ask him about the $5 million life insurance policy. I had timed it perfectly. As Carol was pressing him for details, her phone lit up. She glanced at it, and her expression changed instantly. Insurance. What $5 million insurance policy? She demanded, her head snapping up to stare at her son Ethan. What is this text message talking about? Did you buy a life insurance policy for Maya? Ethan was clearly blindsided. He panicked in front of his own mother. His flimsy facade crumbled. Mom, don't believe it. Someone is just trying to cause trouble. He pleaded weakly. Cause trouble? Carol's voice became shrill. Did you buy the policy or not? Tell me the truth. Under his mother's relentless. Ethan, finally, broke. He stammered, admitting the policy existed, but insisting it was just normal financial planning. But once the seed of doubt was planted, it grew with ferocious speed. Carol was not a stupid woman. She was shrewd and selfish. She immediately connected the dots. Poison insurance, the bad luck daughter-in-law. She arrived at a conclusion that terrified even herself. Ethan. She gasped, grabbing his arm, her voice trembling. Did you try to arrange an accident for your wife to get the money to pay off your debts? Ethan was stunned by his mother's accusation. He couldn't believe she had so accurately guessed his motive. Seeing the silent admission on her son's face, Carol's expression showed no horror, no condemnation. Instead, her eyes began to gleam with a greedy, excited light. She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Oh, you foolish boy, why would you do something like this yourself? You should have told me. Your mother has ways. I could have made sure she got sick and died, or had an accident, all looking perfectly natural. No one would have ever found out. Hearing that, I turned off the recorder. A chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning crept deep into my bones. I had always thought my mother-in-law was merely petty and selfish. I never imagined that such a monster lurked beneath the surface. They were cut from the same cloth. I didn't release the recording immediately. This piece of evidence was even more damning than Jessica's testimony. It not only proved Ethan's motive for murder, but also implicated his seemingly innocent mother. This was my trump card, and I would wait for the most critical moment to play it, to deliver the final devastating blow to them both. Now, all the pieces were in place. All I needed was for Jessica to make her move. The next morning, I got a call from my lawyer, Miss Evans. Jessica is ready to cooperate. Jessica's psychological defenses were weaker than I thought. After 2 sleepless nights in a holding cell, faced with the despair of being completely abandoned by Ethan, she broke. She chose to save herself. She gave a full confession to the police, handing over all her chat logs and money transfer records with Ethan. It was a damning record. Starting 6 months ago, Ethan had ensnared her with sweet talk and luxury gifts. He painted a beautiful picture of their future, promising to take her abroad to start a new life. As soon as the insurance money came through, the chat logs showed them discussing various accident scenarios in detail, from a staged car crash to gas poisoning, before finally settling on the high-success, low-traceability option of potassium chloride. Ethan's counter-surveillance skills were clearly learned from cheap detective novels. He had even searched online for how to commit the perfect murder and sent links to Jessica. All of it became irrefutable evidence against him. Even more damning, Jessica provided an audio recording she had secretly made of a phone call. It was Ethan telling her to dispose of In the call, Ethan's voice was clear. Don't worry, once Mia is dead, all our problems will be solved. Her job as a journalist has made her plenty of enemies. The police will just think it was retaliation. When the police presented this mountain of evidence to Ethan in his hospital bed, the mask of innocence he had been wearing was finally torn to shreds. His face turned from pale to ashen. He knew it was over. But a cornered animal is the most dangerous. Realizing he had no way out, Ethan made the most desperate and foolish decision of all. He turned on me. He told the police that the entire thing was a setup orchestrated by me. He claimed that I discovered his affair with Jessica, and in a fit of jealous rage, staged the entire poisoning to frame him, ruin his life, and take all their marital assets. He even fabricated details. Those 2 drinks, he claimed I was the only one who touched them from start to finish. She knows I love mojito, so she deliberately poisoned one of them and tricked me into drinking it. She's a journalist. She knows how to manipulate public opinion, how to lead the police. You've all been played by her. The accusation was absurd, but my very competence and composure gave it a sliver of plausibility. A normal woman upon discovering her husband's murder plot would have panicked. She wouldn't have calmly recorded evidence, switched drinks, and expertly steered the investigation. My perfect victimhood, in a twisted way, became a weapon he used against me. Soon, sensationalist posts began to appear online. Famous journalist scorned poisons. Cheating husband inside the mind of a media black widow. The lurid headlines paired with my work photos. And personal pictures spread like wildfire. A vocal minority swayed by the narrative began leaving hateful comments on my social media accounts. The posts' phone lines were jammed. My editor was under immense pressure. There was talk from the higher-ups about suspending me to quell the public relations storm I was facing, an unprecedented crisis. The war had moved from the quiet hospital room to the public square. Ethan was trying to destroy my career, my reputation, to cause my social death. I locked myself in my office for a whole afternoon. I didn't read the vicious comments. I didn't call my lawyer to issue a statement. I knew that in the heat of public outrage, any defense would be futile. What I needed was not an explanation but a more powerful, more devastating counterattack. I opened my laptop and began to organize all the evidence I had. First, the original audio from the recorder pen of Ethan's first call with Jessica on the balcony, the initial proof of his murder plot. Second, the recording of me manipulating him into admitting Jessica's existence in the hospital room. Third, the recording from the aromatherapy diffuser of his conversation with his mother about how to make a daughter-in-law die accidentally. Fourth, documents I had obtained through my sources detailing Ethan's gambling deaths in Atlantic City, and the loan agreements he had with several predatory lenders, a sum large enough to drive him to desperate measures. Fifth, the complete record of all the transfers and receipts, showing him using our joint funds to buy luxury goods for Jessica and pay her rent. I organized everything meticulously, creating a clear, chronological, and unbreakable chain of evidence. By the time I finished, night had fallen. I didn't turn the evidence over to the police, nor did I immediately release it online. The battlefield of public opinion required a perfect moment for detonation. I would wait. I would wait for Ethan and the forces behind him to push this farce to its absolute peak. Sure enough, the next day, an even more explosive exposé appeared online, written from the perspective of an insider. The article detailed a fabricated version of how I poisoned Ethan. It even included forged chat logs and medical documents painting me as a cold, calculating monster. At the end of the article was a link to a GoFundMe, calling for donations to help poor victimized Ethan with his medical and legal bills. I looked at the article and smiled. The time had come. I didn't release the story myself. Instead, I gave everything I had, my entire meticulously organized dossier of evidence, as an exclusive to the New York Times, our paper's biggest rival. I knew the media better than anyone. Nothing drives traffic like a shocking exclusive reversal. I had only one condition. They were not to inform me before publication, and were to keep it a complete secret. After sending the files, I turned off my phone, brewed a cup of tea, and sat by the window outside. The city lights twinkled. I knew that just before the dawn comes the deepest darkness, and I was ready for the storm. The in-depth report from the New York Times landed like a nuclear bomb the next morning. The headline was simple and direct: a journalist confession. How I survived my husband's anniversary poison plot, written in my own voice. The article laid out the entire sequence of events with cold journalistic precision. It started with the fatal mojito on our anniversary, moved to the overheard phone call on the balcony, and detailed how I used my professional skills to gather evidence and turn the tables in a life or death situation. Every claim was backed by irrefutable proof. The original audio recording was made public. Ethan's voice saying, "Don't worry, it metabolizes in an hour," untraceable, was a dagger through the heart of his lies. The screenshots of his chat logs with Jessica, filled with cold-blooded planning, were laid bare. The chilling conversation between him and his mother in the hospital room discussing how to make me disappear exposed the family's deep-seated malevolence to the world. The markers from Atlantic City, the high-interest loan agreements, the receipts for gifts lavished on his mistress. Every piece of evidence was a heavy brick, demolishing the victim persona he had so carefully constructed. At the end of the article, I included a personal statement. As a journalist, my duty is to seek the truth in the past. I sought it for the public. This time, I sought it for myself. I was not killed by that poisoned glass. And I will not be destroyed by this campaign of lies. I have faith in the law, and I have faith in justice. It may be delayed, but it will not be denied. The story created a tidal wave. The internet exploded. The same people who had been vilifying me the day before reversed course completely. The public comment sections filled with rage, shock, and sympathy. Holy splade, this is a real-life Gone Girl. That man and his mother are pure evil, absolutely chilling. I can't even imagine the person you sleep next to wants to murder you. All respect to Mia Evans. That level of composure and strategic thinking is incredible, a masterclass in survival. And that Mistress Jessica is no better, willing to help kill someone for money. The slanderous article and the pathetic GoFundMe page became national laughingstocks. The blog that published it was quickly exposed as a front for a shady PR firm hired by one of Ethan's cousins. The police called the post almost as soon as the article went live. They were displeased that I had released key evidence to the public, but they had to admit that it had provided them with a decisive advantage. I was called back to the station. This time I wasn't met by detectives, but by the deputy chief of police. He looked at me with a complex expression. "Miss Evans, you are truly one of a kind." I said nothing, simply handing over all the original evidence, including the recorder pen. "Everything I did was in self-defense," I said calmly. "I trust that the police will ensure a just outcome with this perfect chain of evidence." The police investigation moved swiftly. They immediately audited Ethan's finances, confirming the gambling debts and loans. They obtained security footage from the med spa, showing Jessica stealing the potassium chloride. With physical evidence, witness testimony, and clear motive, everything was in place. Faced irrefutable proof. Ethan and his mother's psychological defenses collapsed during another interrogation. Carol, in a bid to get a lighter sentence, confessed in even more horrifying detail. She had entertained the idea of getting rid of me long before Ethan did. She had purchased some toxic herbs from a quack healer back in Ohio, intending to slowly poison my food over time, making it look like a long illness. She only abandoned her plan because Ethan came up with the insurance scheme first. They were all monsters. Not a single one was innocent. From the day I married into that family, I had walked into an elaborate trap. They were never interested in me as a person, only in the social status my career afforded them, and the financial windfall my death would bring. A wave of retroactive fear washed over me, followed by a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the professional instincts that had alerted me to the danger, and for the composure that had allowed me to make the right moves when it mattered most. The investigation was drawing to a close. Ethan, Carol, and Jessica were all in custody awaiting trial. I could finally breathe. I took an extended leave of absence from the post and went back to my parents' home in the quiet suburban town where I grew up. It was the only safe harbor I had left. My parents didn't know the full gruesome details, only that I was getting a divorce. They didn't press me, just quietly cooked my favorite meals and sat with me in the evenings. One night, as my mother and I were sitting on the porch, she took my hand. "Maya," she said softly, "no matter what happens, you always have a home here," looking at the new strands of gray in her hair. I finally broke down and cried. It was the first time I had truly cried since it all began, not out of fear or sadness, but because in the cold, desolate wasteland of what my life had become, I had finally found a flicker of pure, unconditional warmth again, under the combined pressure of public opinion and the police investigation. Jessica, desperate to secure a plea deal, requested a face-to-face confrontation with Ethan at the hospital. The police agreed. It wasn't just a confrontation, it was a final judgment designed to shatter what was left of Ethan's psychological defenses. As the primary victim, I was allowed to attend, accompanied by detectives. When I walked back into that familiar hospital room, Ethan looked even more haggard than before. Dressed in a standard-issue jumpsuit with his hands cuffed, he was curled up on the bed like a frightened animal. When he saw me and Jessica enter, flanked by 2 officers, the last bit of light in his eyes died. Jessica looked at the man she had once risked everything for, her eyes filled with disappointment and hatred. "Ethan," she began, her voice cold and devoid of emotion, "are you going to keep pretending?" Ethan didn't look at her, burying his head lower. "You said you loved me," Jessica continued, her voice clear and steady in the quiet room. "You said you'd divorce her for me. You said we'd go abroad and start a new life with the money, but now you've pinned every single crime on me. Are you even a man?" Ethan remained silent. "I'm asking you one more time." Jessica's voice rose slightly. Did you or did you not ask me to get the potassium chloride? Did you? Or did you not mastermind the plan to murder Mia? Ethan's head snapped up, his eyes bloodshot. It was you. He screamed hysterically. It was all you. You bitch, you seduced me, you were after my money. If it wasn't for you, none of this would have happened. Even now he was trying to deflect blame. Jessica laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. After your money, Ethan. Let's not forget that car is under a loan in my name. How much of the you lost in Atlantic City did you con out of me? Your so-called company is nothing but an empty shell. You've been lying to me from the very beginning. Their squabbling laid bare the filthy secrets of their affair. I stood by, silently, a true observer. Only when there was a lull in their accusations did I speak. Ethan, I said softly. My voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that instantly silenced the room. He turned to me, his eyes filled with a venomous hatred. I ignored it and looked at him calmly, asking the one question I needed an answer to for myself. Was there ever a single moment when you felt anything real for me? It was the final post-mortem on my 5 years of marriage. He stared at me, then burst into manic laughter, tears streaming from his eyes. Real feelings. Mia, don't flatter yourself. From the day I married you, I was only interested in the prestige of your name. I thought you could help me get investors, expand my network. But you, what can you do besides write a few stupid articles? You were a tool. And when that tool stopped being useful, of course, I had to find a new one. His words were a poisoned dagger twisting into the part of me that had once been softest. Even though I already knew the truth, hearing him say it allowed the complete negation of my love. The confirmation of my utility was a suffocating humiliation. But I didn't break. I simply nodded. I reached into my bag and pulled out my wedding ring. You're right, I was a tool. I walked to his bedside and placed the ring on the nightstand, and now this tool is buying her freedom. Ethan, we are done. I looked him in the eye and said word by word. Do you know what your biggest mistake was? It wasn't your greed or your stupidity. It was that you picked the wrong person to mess with you. Thought I was just some ordinary woman lost in a fantasy of love. But you forgot that my entire profession is about dealing with lies and evil. You tried to destroy me with a lie. But in the end, you were the one consumed by the truth. Without another glance at him, or the equally pathetic Jessica, I turned and walked toward the door. Just as I was about to leave, I heard a desperate guttural scream from behind me. Mia, I hope you rot in hell. I paused, but I didn't turn around. You should save that sentiment for yourself, I said, calmly stepping out of the room. I was met by the bright afternoon sun. I took a deep breath, finally replacing the sterile, desperate air of the hospital with fresh oxygen. I felt a sense of release. I had never known that confrontation wasn't just for Ethan, it was for me. I had finally, with my own hands, put a decisive and definitive end to my dead marriage. From this day forward, I was no longer anyone's wife. I was just Mia Evans, a survivor standing on the ruins of her past, ready to rebuild just when I thought it was all over. But the long wait for the legal process to conclude. Ethan made one last desperate move. Due to the irreversible damage his body sustained from the poisoning, coupled with his mother's public theatrics threatening suicide, he was granted bail after a complex series of legal maneuvers. He was to be under house arrest pending trial. When my lawyer told me the news, my first reaction wasn't anger, but a cold, sharp sense of alarm. A cornered snake is unpredictable. He had nothing left to lose: reputation, career, money, love, all gone for a man like that. The only thing left might be the desire to drag me down to hell with him. My lawyer shared my concern. Miss Evans, you must be extremely careful during this time. Don't go out alone. Reinforce the security at your home. Ethan's mental state is highly unstable. I took his advice. I didn't return to my townhouse, the Post, for me to stay in a high-security corporate apartment. A car service with a trusted driver took me to and from work, and I carried a panic button at all times, but I had still underestimated Ethan's madness. He vanished. He never showed up at his designated residence for house arrest. He contacted no friends or family. He was a ghost lurking somewhere in the city, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The constant invisible threat was more suffocating than any open confrontation. He finally appeared on a dark, rainy night. I had been working late on an urgent story as the car pulled into the underground garage of my apartment building. My driver, a sharp-eyed Army veteran, noticed a black sedan parked near the entrance, engine running. The windows were heavily tinted. Something's not right, Miss Evans, he said, his voice tense. Stay in the car. He immediately radioed the paper security team and dialed 911 at that exact moment. The black sedan roared to life, charging directly at us like a maddened bull. "Hold on." My driver yelled, wrenching the wheel. We narrowly avoided a head-on collision, but the side of our car screeched against his, the sound of tearing metal deafening the sedan. Then swerved, blocking our path completely. The driver's door flew open. A man in a baseball cap and a face mask jumped out, a long gleaming knife in his hand. Even with the disguise, I recognized him instantly. Ethan, his eyes were bloodshot, filled with a terrifying destructive rage. "Mia, get out of the car," he screamed, hammering the hilt of the knife against my window. Spider web cracks instantly appeared on the safety glass. My blood ran cold. I never thought he would be so brazen, so violent. The driver had already locked the doors. "Miss Evans, get down, stay down," he commanded. Just then, several beams of bright headlights flooded the garage from another entrance, accompanied by the piercing wail of sirens. The police and the paper security team had arrived. Seeing the police cars, Ethan knew he was trapped. He let out a primal scream, and with all his strength plunged the knife into the fractured window. With a loud crack, the glass shattered, sending shards flying. I felt the cold rain, and the sharp tip of the blade just inches from my cheek. "MPD, drop the weapon, do it now." Several officers surrounded him, their guns drawn. He froze, the knife clattering to the concrete floor. He looked at the police, then at me, safe in the car. A grotesque smile spread across his face, a look more painful than tears. "You win, Mia," he muttered just before the officers tackled him to the ground. The cold steel of handcuffs snapped around his wrists once more. This time there would be no escape. I sat in the car, my body still trembling with adrenaline and fear, but I knew it was truly, finally, over. His last desperate attack had not only failed to harm me, but it had also added the final irrefutable charges to his indictment: assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder, a fugitive, a violent offender caught in the act. The long, terrifying nightmare had reached its conclusion on this dark and stormy night. The day of the trial finally arrived. I sat at the plaintiff's table, flanked by the city's top legal team hired by the Post at the defendant's table. Ethan, Carol, and Jessica sat in their prison-issue jumpsuits, pale and defeated. Ethan's eyes were empty, hollowed. Carol, however, stared at me with pure, unadulterated hatred, as if I were the one who had ruined her family. The trial itself was a formality. The evidence was overwhelming. The prosecutor played the decisive audio recording in the silent, solemn courtroom. Ethan's voice, cold and clear, echoed through the chamber. "Metabolizes in an hour, untraceable." A gasp through the gallery. One by one, the chat logs, the recording of Carol, and the security footage of Ethan's final violent attack were presented. His lawyer's attempts to argue for a crime of passion or temporary insanity were systematically dismantled. Ethan himself remained silent, offering no defense. Carol, however, provided the final bit of courtroom drama. When asked if she pleaded guilty, she became hysterical, pointing a trembling finger at me. It was her. "It was all that witch's fault. She drove my son to this. She's a curse." Her outburst earned her nothing but a swift removal by the bailiffs. Her curse is echoing as she was dragged from the room. The most dramatic moment came from Jessica, citing her cooperation and deep remorse. Her lawyer pleaded for leniency during her final statement. She tearfully apologized to me. Then she pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "An ultrasound, Your Honor, I'm pregnant." She sobbed. "The baby is Ethan's. For the sake of my child, I'm begging you for a chance to start over." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Ethan looked up, his face a mask of disbelief. Even I was taken aback. To use an unborn child as a shield at the last moment was a move of breathtaking cynicism, but the law is the law. After a brief recess, the judge delivered the verdict. Ethan Cole, for charges of attempted murder, insurance fraud, and aggravated assault, was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Carol Cole, for conspiracy and solicitation to commit murder, was sentenced to 10 years. Jessica, for her role as an accomplice but given her cooperation and extenuating circumstances, was sentenced to 5 years of probation and had her nursing license permanently revoked. As the judge's gavel fell, I let out a long, slow breath. Justice, though delayed, had not been denied. Outside the courthouse, a sea of reporters swarmed me. "Miss Evans, are you satisfied with the verdict?" "Mia, what are your plans now?" I said nothing. I simply turned to the cameras and gave a deep, respectful bow. Then, escorted by my editor and colleagues, I pushed through the crowd and got into a waiting car. As the car pulled away, I watched the courthouse recede in the rearview mirror. The war was won, but I had lost 5 years of my life. My phone buzzed a text from my lawyer, Miss Evans. The civil divorce hearing is tomorrow. Given that Ethan is the at-fault party, you will be awarded all marital assets. I texted back 2 words, thank you. The accounting had just begun. The divorce proceedings were a swift epilogue with the criminal convictions in place. Ethan had no legal ground to stand on. He didn't even appear, sending a court-appointed lawyer in his stead. The judge granted the divorce and awarded me everything: our townhouse, the cars, all bank accounts and investments. The court also ordered Ethan to repay all the joint funds he had spent on Jessica. With the divorce decree in hand, I began to systematically dismantle my old life. First I sold the house. The place that held 5 years of memories was now just a cold, tainted space. It sold quickly. The money in the bank felt not like a victory but like the shedding of a heavy weight. Second, I sold the cars. I didn't want to drive another mile in anything that reminded me of him. Third, I closed every joint bank account, transferring the balance into a new account under my name alone. These numbers, once a symbol of our shared future, were now the capital for my new beginning. During this process, I discovered the true extent of his deception beyond the gambling debts. He owed money to suppliers for his sham company. He was a complete fraud. I had my lawyer issue a public notice disavowing any responsibility for his personal debts. As for Jessica, she avoided prison. Her life was ruined. The story was everywhere. She was fired and ostracized from her community. She had to return to her small hometown. I heard her parents, unable to bear the gossip, eventually cut ties with her. She called me once, crying, begging for money to start over somewhere new for the sake of her baby. I refused. Jessica, I said calmly, your child is innocent, but you are not. You made your choices. I have no obligation to finance your future. I hung up and blocked her number. I am not a saint for someone who helped plot my murder. My lack of vengeance was the greatest mercy I could offer. Last was Carol from prison. She requested that I hire a better caregiver for her. I refused that too, but I did take a small portion of the money from the house sale and made an anonymous donation to the state's correctional system, earmarked for improving elder care for all inmates. I hated her, but I would not become like her. When it was all done, I was overcome with a profound exhaustion. I had won a long, brutal war, but I was covered in scars. I submitted my resignation to the Post. My editor tried to convince me to stay, telling me my fame was at its peak. I used to think being a good journalist meant exposing all the darkness in the world, I told him, but I've learned that when you get too close to the darkness, it tries to consume you. I need to find a new way to live. He understood. I left the city I had loved and hated, the career I had dedicated my life to. I bought a one-way ticket to a place I'd never been, a small, quiet town on the California coast. I needed to say goodbye to the past and to the woman I had been. I rented a small house overlooking the ocean in Caramel by the sea. I opened a small online bookstore. My days became simple, curating books, packing orders and watching the tide roll in and out. I learned to surf. I learned to paint. The sun turned my skin a healthy bronze, timed the ocean, and the sun began to heal the deep wounds. A year later, my old editor called. The series I had written about my ordeal had won the Pulitzer Prize. He wanted me to come back for the ceremony. I hesitated, then agreed. I needed to write a final, proper ending to that chapter of my life. I stood on the stage in a simple white dress, the heavy gold medal in my hand. The applause was thunderous. I didn't read my prepared speech. Instead, I just looked out at the audience and spoke from the heart. A year ago, I thought my life was over. But standing here today, I want to say to anyone who has ever faced betrayal, who has ever been lost in the darkness, never give up hope. Never lose the capacity to love and be loved. When you find the courage to walk out of the abyss, you will find that the world is far more beautiful and welcoming than you ever imagined. This story was my last as Mia Evans, the journalist, but it is the first chapter for Mia Evans, the person. Thank you. After the ceremony, I left the Pulitzer in the Post trophy room and quietly went to the airport. As I was boarding the plane back to my new life, a text message arrived from my lawyer. It was brief. Jessica's baby was born. A paternity test proved Ethan was not the father. I stared at the message for a long moment, then a small, sad smile touched my lips. I deleted it. Their lives built on lies and calculations had nothing to do with me anymore. The plane took off, and the city lights below shrank to tiny, glittering specks. I leaned against the window, watching the clouds drift by in the bright, warm sun. A song I loved played softly through my headphones, its melody light and free. I closed my eyes and hummed along my new life. My exclusive story was just beginning, and this time the only reader would be me.